Don't get cocky!
Okay, got it all set up there. Let's make sure I don't get the reflection in there. All right. Well, here we are again. Another movie review stream. My name is Martin Ferson, film critic for movieswithmark.com. And we're right in the middle of June, so summer movie season, and we've got plenty of new films to talk about today. Obviously, a lot of big ones. We're going to talk about Toy Story 5, obviously, the new Pixar film coming out this weekend. We will also be talking about Disclosure Day, the latest from Steven Spielberg that released last weekend. And we'll be talking about a little film that's been making waves, that being Backrooms. So, a lot to talk about today. And also a very quick mini review I'll get done today just because I kind of saw it last minute, but there's a little movie out too called She's the He, which we will get to covering as well. Yeah, if you'd like to stay up to date on the latest movies, since Toy Story 5 is releasing this weekend, so you're going to be getting an early review here. Be sure to like this video so that other people know about this stream, and stay subscribed for more new movies as we get through the summer and into the fall award season. All right, so let's read through some of the chat here. We got Scorns here. Hey, how you doing? Wild Wilson 814 says, surprised it took this long for Backrooms. Yeah, we didn't actually get a screening for the Backrooms, so I had to find some time to see it during all the other films that I was covering. So I finally got around to it. Took a while. See, Jacob's here, Chibi 76490 here. Scorn says, I think you will see the new Jackass movie. Possibly. I think the Jackass movies are okay. I mean, the first three, I think they're fun to see in the theater. And I did see the one prior in the theater as well, which I thought was a good experience. I thought it not all the jokes hit as well. Some of them kind of felt a little par for the course, and they kind of showed the age of the crew a little too much. But it still had its charming moments. Like I don't mind the little opening skit they did with like the Godzilla penis puppet. That was cute. There was some nice production quality to it. It was charming. It wasn't as like shocking as a lot of the other Jackass stuff. Given all their other stuff, but it's par for the course. It's an alright film. So I'm hoping the last one will be hoping that it's not just like a fond farewell and just the greatest hits. Wild Wilson 814 says they made two more of those. Yeah, they made a lot of Jackass movies. I don't think they've really stopped. Like Johnny Knoxville did try to do some more narrative-based prank films, like Bad Grandpa, and I think he did one called like Action Park or something like that. Yeah, Johnny Knoxville never stopped the Jackass stuff. It just kept going. Let's see. Let's see. Chibi says, I'm curious to see your thoughts on Disclosure Day. I've seen pretty split opinions. Yeah, it's a little bit polarizing, and I think that's kind of a good thing because then it tells you that Spielberg's actually kind of swinging a bit, and I have kind of a little bit of mixed feelings on it as well, which I'll get into. Mr. Rabbit says, gonna see Backrooms tomorrow, so give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hold the spoilers. Yeah, don't worry. There's not too much to spoil, but don't worry. I'll pull back on that. So I did write a spoiler-free review. He says, also seeing mixed reviews for Disclosure Day. Bummer, I like alien flicks. You might like this. It depends on what type of alien film you like. Like, if you enjoy more of the conspiracy theory aspect of it, I think you'd probably enjoy it more. If you're looking for more like, aliens blow up shit, no, it's probably not going to be your movie. Wilson814 says, I saw 3 Jackass films in theaters, like Toy Story, then I fell off. I mean, I think there's only been like one other aside from the one we're getting right now that came out like 3 years ago. I think it was either like 3 or 4 years ago it came out, but it was fairly recent. Ada says, Mark, don't do this to me. It's 1 a.m. here and I have work tomorrow. All right, well, I'll try to be quick here once I get through the chat here. Will you make time for Furious? I will try to, in the same way that I'll make room for Backrooms, and that I will review it, just probably not early, not right away. Chibi says also, happy 50k subs. Yep, 50,000 subs. I am working on some stuff for a special AMA stream, which we will probably either have late this week or next week. I'll see when I can schedule it best and when I can get around to filming some stuff that I want to prioritize for it. Some loser called Jab says, I'm convinced Disclosure Day just manifested into reality. I've seen nothing about it. Well, it's intentionally been, the promotions have been intentionally vague, and that's because they want more of a mystery to it. Except that it's polarizing. It's a bit polarizing. It's good depending on like what you want out of an alien film, which I will get into. So yeah. Well, without further ado, since we're already on the topic, why don't we just go straight into Disclosure Day here? So let me get the notes up here, and we'll get the screen set up with my notes on the side here, and we'll talk about the latest from Steven Spielberg. All right. So just going to clear my throat here a little bit. And while I get the notes set up on this end, be sure to check out the Patreon as well, which gives you access to exclusive videos. There is a video that only my patrons and YouTube subscribers can see, membership subscribers can see on the Sydney Sweeney movie Christie, which is a tiny script. I just tossed it in there, but it's a little special thing for all your guys' support. Little thank you there. All right. So here we go. It's Disclosure Day in 3, 2, 1. So oh my goodness. I didn't quite clear my throat all the way there. One moment here. Sorry, just want to make it so I don't screw up here. All right, here we go. With Disclosure Day in 3, 2, 1. So Disclosure Day is the latest film from Steven Spielberg, and it involves aliens, which is not something new for Steven Spielberg. He's done Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. and War of the Worlds. So where does Disclosure Day sit among all these alien movies? Well, not quite at the top, but I mean, like, that's, Spielberg has done some top-tier alien movies, so it's kind of like a high bar to meet here. I will say this, though. Disclosure Day does have, like, I think the most earnest heart that for what Spielberg wants to express with alien movies. So, well, I'll just get right into it. So Disclosure Day is very much that type of Spielberg. Actually, let me start from the beginning here. What I was going to read it. Yeah. Yeah. With this. Yeah. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day. Now, Steven Spielberg has directed some of the most hopeful and profound science fiction, some of which were about aliens that want to talk rather than conquer or eat us. In some cases. And Disclosure Day is very much that type of Spielberg film, placing it among the ranks of Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., and even though this latest entry doesn't quite match the same level of comfy charisma in the other movies, its big ideas are admirable for what it is, for what is essentially a conspiracy theory that leans more towards the towards a humanistic and heartfelt revelation. So the unexplained becomes a rousing element in Spielberg's story, screenwritten by David Cope. That we do get sorry. So the unexplained becomes a rousing element in Spielberg's story, screenwritten by David Cope. That we get the thrill of being dropped right into this intricate plot. Like we don't know too much. Like we don't know that much about Daniel Kellner, played by Josh O'Connell. One more time there. We don't know that much about Daniel Kellner, played by Josh O'Connor, other than that he's being targeted by a group of dangerous men in suits led by the cruel Noah Scanlon, played by Colin Firth. We don't know much we don't know... We don't know why Kansas City weather reporter Margaret Fairchild, played by Emilia Blunt, starts speaking Russian, just out of the blue, but it does have something to do with a bird that she saw. We don't know why the lying low Hugo Wakefield, played by Coleman Domingo, is building what looks like a house, but it must be important considering all the crucial phone calls that he's making in between construction. And all of it amounts to a well-kept secret of aliens that could mean the difference between the world obliterating itself in World War III or evolving as a species. So, sorry. The movie has the movie has this. The movie has why do I keep saying bizarre? Not bizarre behavior. The movie has the behavior of somebody with a secret that they're trying not to spill, but they can't help themselves. And they just want to spill everything out immediately. Because if the first act was a progressive drip of the mysterious, the second act, it spells out the complexities in a digestible way that no audience can misinterpret. Take, for example, Daniel's girlfriend, Jane, played by Eve Hewson, who serves her purpose as a former nun questioning her spirituality amid the revelation of aliens coming from the stars. Her paranoia is perfectly preyed upon by someone as manipulative as Noah, but her faith can be easily restored with the sage words of Sister Maura, played by Elizabeth Marvel. Now, thematically, the character of the character of now thematically the character of Jane is she kind of serves her purpose. She is a vessel for how she hits the ground running in this story. Damn it, I screwed up one more time. Thematically, Jane is an essential character, but feels more like a vessel for how she hits the ground running in this story. The same can be said for Margaret's boyfriend of Jackson, played by Wyatt Russell, serving up only a mild dose of comic relief to these strange happenings all around him. And at the core of the picture is a need for empathy, perfectly conveyed through Margaret's newfound ability to speak every language and peer into everybody's mind. And armed with such an amazing. God damn it!
Don't get cocky.
I'm trying. Thank you so much for the subscription. All right, one more time. Sorry, I lost my breath there. Okay. Armed with such an amazing talent, she effortlessly drops armed with such amazing talent, she effortlessly drops into conversations of unresolved family matters and breakdowns in communication. And this is an incredible discovery, but one that Margaret can't take much wonderment in exploring, what with a nasty cybersecurity agency pursuing her with a handful of exciting car chases. And she learns while running how to effortlessly break down any human that she encounters into more of an individual than an asset, because at one point, she essentially just speedruns her psychic therapy technique to make her way through an entire security force. Like, she doesn't attack them. She just says, like, oh, I can peer into your soul. It's like, oh, you're worried about this connection? Let me reassure you. Or let me take the image of someone you love and just, like, break them down and make these people realize the humanity in their soul rather than just serving a cybersecurity firm. So this is a movie that tries to do so much that it ends up stumbling and reducing itself to get all its grand ambitions onto the screen in under 3 hours. But thankfully, even amid the over-explaining in the second act, there are some genuinely touching moments where the characters are given room to breathe amid the many expositional dumps. The connections that Margaret and Daniel form when they finally meet is rather sweet for how they literally have their own language and can understand each other's plight. Margaret spends the bulk of the movie so uncertain and frantic about her powers that that's very comforting to see Daniel calm her amid a panic attack, which is always a good sign. I always like when there's a character who has a panic attack and there's someone there to properly handle it instead of just like, like smack them around and saying like snap out of it. Like there's actually genuine understanding there between these two characters. Now, of course, it helps to have a mesmerizing score by John Williams and some unique special effects involving alien communication devices and invisibility. So there's a little bit of that alien wonderment the more that you get through the story. It shouldn't surprise anybody that by the third act, Spielberg delivers on his promise of aliens, but he builds up enough humanity so that when the truth comes out, it means so much more than some, like an episode of the X-Files, that was okay. That was okay, what was it said? It means so much more than some, instead of feeling like a handful of very astute X-File episodes. And there's a tightrope walk of wonder and philosophy and how Spielberg crafts a movie that can be as contemplative as it is thrilling. An earnest appeal to human connection does go down a little smoother when characters are narrowly avoiding being hit by trains. So there are some pretty neat action sequences, even though they don't really turn up all that much until like the second act. And part of me wanted to see more of that lived-in quality with the characters, because that's very much a Spielberg hallmark. Like, with like movies like Close Encounters and E.T., we got to hang out with these characters and their community, and it felt very relatable, very, very real. And we don't get as much of that in the film, mostly because the ideas get the front seat this time, while we don't get as much of that charisma because the ideas get the front seat this time. And while that is a tad disheartening, it also makes the conversation more direct than aloof. The narrative is still careful about keeping the narrative is still careful about keeping the anxiety of World War III in the background rather than delving into the specifics, because that's not really the point of the story. The focus on communication, particularly in the final act when it pretty much turns into a broadcast news drama at that point. But just the entire focus on communication is never lost in a film that begs us to listen to each other without coming off very hokey and preachy. It does feel like there are a few moments where it kind of gets into that territory, but it thankfully becomes more empathetic rather than just, preachy. That was my biggest concern. And it thankfully isn't with Spielberg's story, given a little extra oomph, by David Koepp and Spielberg's, exciting direction as well. So Disclosure Day may not be Spielberg's best alien movie, but it does offer the most humanity and thought amid its conspiracy theory thrills. And despite the many times that the film has to slow down and spell out the connections, the unmistakable appeal of connecting with each other before we connect with the cosmos does make for an intriguing film. It might be lacking in a few Spielberg hallmarks here and there, but it also doesn't trip down the steep stairs of sanctimoniousness in its universal messaging. What it holds in the highest regard might be the hope that there's something better over the horizon, even amid all the turmoil. And that might be a hard sight to behold in our current world right now, but Spielberg's film makes that desire for peace not only seem tantalizing, but also within our grasp. And we could all use a little sentimental balm of a movie like this, one that combats the mind, and we could really all use a little, and we could all use a sentimental balm of a movie like this that is one that combats the mindlessness and the meanness of our world and our media. And I kind of went back and forth on this film because on the one hand, the characters kind of like spell out a lot of the themes directly, and I wish there was a little bit more time spent with the characters before they have to dump all this on the audience. But at the same time, I think, for general audiences who come to this film, there's no way to misread that message of hope and empathy. And I think Spielberg does a great job communicating that through an intriguing alien conspiracy, which I think works out really well. I think it was very charming to see an alien conspiracy movie where there's not like dread and dissection and, like vicious aliens wanting to eat us in the next scene. Like there's actually a desire to understand and better our world and just be more honest and be more open with each other. And I think that's a wonderful message to have. But like I say, a movie with a good message has to be a good movie first. And I think for the most part, even with the stumbling here and there, I still think this is a pretty good Spielberg film. So yeah, it's not on the same level as E.T. and Close Encounters, but for having a very, very hopeful and humanistic approach, I think Disclosure Day is a pretty damn good film. So, Disclosure Day should still be in theaters right now. If you'd like to check it out, it's actually doing pretty well though. I think it's actually one of Spielberg's best performing films in a while. Could help that it's IMAX, Could help. Let's see. Let's read through stuff here. Read through some comments. Mr. Rabbit says, I like more X-File-y alien films, so guess Disclosure Day is a meh. Reviewers said it's Spielberg being Spielberg and a 2.5 out of 45. I'm assuming you mean 5. That seems really low. Yeah, I will say, yeah, it's not Spielberg at his best. But this is Spielberg we're talking about, and he's made some of the best science fiction films ever made. So it's kind of a high bar, and it's not quite up there. But I think if you're willing to go along with the themes, if you're willing to embrace like a more hopeful alien story, I think the film will actually work for you. I did have issues, like I will say this, I did not like the first act. I think the first act moves a little too slow with like the mystery. And by the second act, it just kind of feels like it's explaining everything immediately. Which again, I went back and forth. I was like, well, does it need to be explained? It's like, well, for some audiences, it might, especially when you have this complex of it's not too complex, but it is like a very mapped out story that requires a bit of explanation here and there. So I understand why they did that. So yeah. Let's see. Andia Studio says, I think the 5th Toy Story movie is going to be okay. I don't think we need another Jackass film. I don't know how many more they can make at this point. Like, they're all old and, like, they can barely function. Oh, my goodness. Oh, did I turn the other alert thing on there? Oh, no, I didn't. Shoot, I got to bring that up here. Is it like Contact? And yeah, oops, for it. It is a little like Contact. I think that is a pretty close comparison, except I think Contact, I think, gets a little lost in the mechanics of discovering that portal and getting in touch with aliens. That it does get a little preachy by like the final act. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And I don't think Disclosure Day is quite on that level because it always keeps that human element in check. So a little bit, at least like tonal wise, I think it's a little closer in its themes to Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's film. Not so much on like action, obviously, but for the most part. So yeah, it's a sci-fi film that's heavier on ideas. I think it's the best way to say it. And if you if you enjoy very fascinating discoveries about our universe that aren't so simplistic, I think you might be fine with the film. You might. Okay. Wait, did that get the... Hang on, I'm trying to get my notes up here. Okay, there we go. All right. So obviously, now that we got... since we're talking about Jackass 5, we might as well get on to talking about Toy Story 5, which I have right here. Oh. Wait. How did... Shoot. Sorry, I'm looking at my monitor around the camera here. Because I'm using a giant TV as a monitor here, but which is nice because it gives me a little extra lighting on the side here, but it also makes it hard to see the screen. All right, so without further ado, we will get into Toy Story 5 here. Let me get my notes up here. Get some tea. All right. And here we go with Toy Story 5 in 3. Should start from 5. 3, 2, 1. So Toy Story 5 is the 5th entry in the Toy Story franchise that has been going on for well over 30 years. Now, when I saw this movie, I sat in the movie theater Saturday morning with a host of families preparing to watch the 5th Toy Story film. And among the audience were many people who were the same age as I, including a father who was showing off his old Burger King toys to his peers, which I recall fondly from my childhood as well. So obviously, with this type of crowd and this type of franchise, there's some nostalgia, sure, but there's also an assurance for family viewing from a film saga that somehow manages to find the heartwarming in a silly tale of sentient toys. And in this regard, Toy Story 5 lives up to what makes these films so great. Sorry, I'm running out of breath here. So in this regard, Toy Story 5 lives up to what makes these films great, even if the toy box has become so ridiculously crowded that even I think a handful of them should be donated, if only to avoid constantly recasting the voice actors who did not live to see how far these characters have come. Now, it's more impressive that this film manages to find a touching story despite cramming in so many characters and plot lines under 2 hours. Now, the toys of Bonnie, now under the leadership of Jessie, voiced by Joan Cusack, must now grapple with their latest rival, that being technology, invading the bedroom in the form of the tablet Lily, voiced by Greta Lee. And like every new innovation, another toy apocalypse is upon the old gang, where the terrified Rex, once more voiced by Wallace Shawn, fears extinction, and the cynical Ham, once again voiced by John Ratzenberger, cracks a joke about what storage they're bound for. And amid all this, Buzz Lightyear, once again voiced by Tim Allen, weighs a marriage proposal to Jessie, and Woody, once again played by Tom Hanks, still tries to assert control, even though he's more of a visiting sheriff this time than the local resident. The central toys are... Sorry, breath there. Now, the central toys are thankfully more concerned with their purpose for Bonnie than their own preservation. Now, sure, they fear... Sorry, I'm running out of breath here. One more time of that. So, The central toys are thankfully more concerned with their purpose for Bonnie than with their own preservation. Now, sure, they fear that the rise of digital screens will reduce playtime and damage Bonnie's ability to connect with her peers. One more time. Sorry, I got lost there. Sure, they fear the rise of the digital screens and how they will reduce playtime, but they're also concerned about the damage that will be done to Bonnie and her ability to connect with her peers. This is why Lily is a more compelling villain than in previous movies, because Lily is not a toy bound by bitterness at being disposable, like the previous villains. She is basically she has a pompous belief that she serves a better purpose than the toys that she illuminates over. And the abundance of tech might not be enough to form relationships. And the abundance of tech might not be enough to form relationships in which unintended byproducts develop within Bonnie's group chat. But the world of technology also has its abandoned and its bitter, just like the world of toys, as with the potty training device of Smarty Pants, voiced by Conan O'Brien, finding new life through the philosophy of the toys that extol the virtues of playtime to him. Which makes him kind of a fun character, even though there are a lot of potty jokes they make with this character. But they thankfully don't get too annoying. They're clever without just falling back on the obvious here. And I thought Conan gave a pretty funny performance here. Now, the avoidance and demonizing of sorry, one more time. I got lost there. One more time. Sorry, getting the hair on the side there. The avoidance of demonizing or idolizing technology is rather surprising in a film this overloaded with everything. And while there isn't a reduction in the core themes, there is so much else that gets reduced to, just to snugly make its... One more time there, sorry. Clear my throat there. Now, while there isn't much of a reduction in the core themes, there's so much else that gets reduced to, just snugly make its way into this film. Jessie still has unresolved thoughts about her previous owner, prompting her to revisit the passage of Jessie still has unresolved thoughts about her previous owner, prompting her to revisit the passage of time. Screwed it up, everyone. Jessie still has some unresolved thoughts about her previous owner, and this prompts her to literally revisit the passage of time and reflect on everywhere that she's been. Bent? Fuck. Jessie still has unresolved thoughts about her previous owner, prompting her to revisit the passage of time and reflect. New animal friends, like a helpful horse and a messy pig, become tamed by toys, working their way up from, the toys have gone a long way. They've come a long way from raising dogs to essentially be their horses, among other toy horses, which there are a lot of in this film. And there's also an entire subplot of high-tech synchronized Buzz Lightyear toys who go on a little adventure through a world they don't fully understand, especially when their first words are essentially star command. So it was kind of cute to see this adventure they go on that doesn't have too much dialogue to it. Now, keep in mind that nearly all the characters from the previous film return for this sequel, along with a dozen new ones, ranging from the potential human friend of Blaze, to the GPS hippo toy of Atlas, to the kid camera Snappy. So many toys continue to be added to this saga that, at this point, I don't know why they fear an apocalypse. There are still so many toys that band together. I mean, at this point, they might as well just adopt the battle cry of Bebe's kids, where they would say, "We don't die, we multiply," which is pretty much what is happening. Like, these toys have seen a lot, and they feel like they're going to outlive all humans pretty much. Now, as a sequel that reiterates the plight of toys fearing the trash and the accumulation of textural grime from their adventures, it's slightly surprising how well these movies hold up over time, even if this one is definitely one of the weaker entries. Because there's a cramped quality to how much it tries to wedge into its absurd ensemble. There is a cramped quality to how much it tries to wedge into its absurd ensemble, but it still delivers the most important emotional beats that ring true. It's easy to get choked up at Bonnie's somber feelings of being shamed among her tech-obsessed peers. There's an amusing charm to the imaginative playtime sequences. There's some amusing charm to the imaginative playtime sequences, ranging from spy thrillers to wedding dramas, with twists aplenty that only children could come up with. And while many characters are severely reduced, including many returning toys who don't really have much of any dialogue, those occupying the foreground still manage to crack some smiles and evoke some tears, even without the decades of investment behind these inanimate objects that have been granted personality, because a lot of the kids really did seem to love these characters. One more breath and we'll get to the end. Here we go. So Toy Story 5 still has a playful and thoughtful allure, even with the wear and tear more visible this time around. While this sequel is certainly the lesser of the 5 films, it's tough to be hard on a film that still has enough heart to evoke tears, though in a lower volume than in previous pictures. Like an old electronic toy fished out of clutter, it's remarkable how operational these films remain, with as much attention paid to the focus on the cultural shift in childhood play as the intricate details of this smaller world. The computer graphics might have improved, but the generational devotion to creative play remains as persistent, engaging, and hilarious as ever. These toys still have some play left in them, even with all the dust and scuffs that you can see on their exterior. So, it's definitely not up there with the best Toy Story movies, but the fact that it still has a lot of charm and personality to it, and that I felt my heartstrings still tug for this old franchise, I think is still pretty cool. So even for being a lesser Toy Story film, it's still really lovable, and I still had a pretty damn good time with it. So yeah, Toy Story 5, still pretty good for how long these animated films have been going. So Toy Story 5 will be playing in theaters this weekend. This Father's Day weekend. And pretty good choice. If your family's going, for the dads who have to go to the theater, this is a pretty good one. All right. Let's read through some of the chat here before we get to the final film here of the Backrooms. Let's see. Here we go. Chibi says, it's curious to see hopeful science fiction becoming big right now. I'm not sure what to take away from that fact, besides we all seem to want more empathy in the world right now. I think it's also, too, because I think a lot of people want more challenging science fiction, as opposed to just like, you know, like sci-fi battles and starships, or, you know, all that, you know, like the Star Wars, and to a lesser extent, you know, the Abrams era of Star Trek movies. I think people just want more out of science fiction, and I think it's been pretty cool that, yeah, like with Project Hail Mary and Disclosure Day, we've been getting some of that. I think, yeah, just people want more thoughtful science fiction, and if you give it to them, if you serve it up, if you make it, you know, I think Spielberg did a really good job making it digestible for a mainstream summer audience, which is something I tried to keep in mind throughout the film, because, like, you know, it's like, well, this is spelling out too much. It was like, well, it is Spielberg. It is a giant IMAX film, and you don't want audiences to take the wrong meaning from it. You don't want them to just get hung up on, what if the aliens did this, or what if they escaped the car through this way? It's like, no, you don't want to get hung up on that. And I think Spielberg does a good job with this script in that regard. Wild Wilson says modern science can keep them alive. Yeah, for the toys, yeah, probably. Scorn says, I think Jackass 5 will be some new stuff. Bam's lost footage, and a highlight of the past best stunts. Probably. I don't know how many new stunts they could do. It felt like they were running out of. It felt like they were running out because like they're adding new cast members, and I think it's mostly they're priming. They're priming for the OG crew to descend. I feel like Jackass is probably still going to go on after this movie, but not without the original crew. I think it's going to be replaced by all the new additions, and we're going to get like Jackass 2.0, basically. So I think this is like one final farewell for like Johnny Knoxville and the old crew, those that remain. Mr. Rabbit says, having seen Project Hail Mary and liking it, yeah, some Hope Core is nice to have these days. Amaze. Yes. Very much. And I'm glad that a lot of people liked Project Hail. I think that's the other thing to take in mind too, is like with Disclosure Day and Project Hail Mary, they feel like very intricate science fiction that has been boiled down to be digestible by mainstream audiences, which I think is kind of cool. Because I think it proves that, you can have science fiction that is more thoughtful and does go into bigger themes and does want to focus on more of the tech that goes behind some of these stories and still make it entertaining, which is which is a pretty cool thing. I think, the adaptation of Andy Weir's writing to make it more palatable for general audiences, which I don't think is too much of a reduction. I think it gets the core idea across, and it doesn't feel like it reduces it too much to be entertaining. Let's see. Dinglebert says, I still haven't seen Toy Story 4. Is that worth a watch? I think so. I think it's definitely not as good as Toy Story 3, but it does manage to be heartfelt. It does manage to be genuine, and it does touch on interesting aspects of the characters. I think probably the weakest thing about 4 is that the villain isn't too much different from Toy Story 3, where it's essentially like, another dominant tossed aside toy trying to assert dominance and fight back against the idea that toys still have relevancy. Which is what I really liked about 5. Like I love the villain of 5 way more than 4, just because the villain actually is capable of redemption, because Lily isn't just like, oh, I'm evil, I'm going to wipe all the toys off the map. Like, Lily genuinely has this idea in her head that she is going to be better for Bonnie than the toys. And she has like a moment of humility where she realizes, oh no, I don't actually know everything, and I need to find a way to solve this, and it can't just be through me. I actually have to rely on other people. I actually have to build up a friendship the same way that Bonnie does. I got to work together with the toys in order to improve the life of this child. Otherwise, I haven't served my purpose. I essentially haven't been a good parent, which I think, for the older audience, and by older I mean my age, who haven't picked up on it, the toys are the parents. The toys are trying to look after a child and trying to do what's right for the child, and having opposing forces try to stop that or stifle that or make their own lives worse for the sake of some other toy, Which is kind of a fascinating aspect. But yeah, 4 I think is worth watching. I would say, of all the films, 5th is probably the least the least entertaining one, but still really good. Like, I'm grading on like a heavy curve here, because the Toy Story films for the most part have all been stellar as far as I'm concerned. So it's a really high bar to cross. So I essentially I set the bar at like, okay, if I feel something in this film, if I resonate really with the toys or Bonnie or other human characters, then I'm like, okay, this is a pretty good film. And it's like, yeah, then I enjoy it, and I did. Also, just thematically healthy. Just fantastic. It's not just like demonizing tech or saying that tech is like a necessity and that you can't avoid it. No, it's actually about an intersection between both, which is approached in a very earnest way. Which is I feel like that was the biggest pitfall of a script like this. You have to think about that, because if it doesn't come off genuine, if it just falls on either side of that, like, it's going to come off disingenuous. It's not going to read well for the audience. And thankfully it hit just the right marks there. Let's see. Let's see. Jay says these streams are cool. Would love to hear some more movie store lore though. Um, Trying to think of some other stories I might have. I think I might have like one or two. I could probably dig up a few from my past. I'll tell you what. After the review, I'll get to another video store story. We'll do a little video store story time. And that almost turned into a tongue twister there. Let's see. Mr. Rabbit says, I've heard that Backrooms is Lynchian, like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive. And hey, those are right up my alley, so I guess I'll enjoy it. I like the mythos and am aware of the YouTube series. It is. I think it's a little... it's not as aloof as Lynch, but in terms of what it's touching on with the themes of Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, yeah, it's very much in that same degree. And there are a few moments where you're... where it doesn't explain everything. It explains a little bit of how the backrooms work here and there, but not everything. So yeah, it's pretty good. Like I don't quite want to say Lynchian because it's not too mysterious. Like you do kind of figure it out if you can put two and two together here. But yeah, for the same, it does touch on the same themes. Wild Wilson 814 says the film introduces new concepts. I know nothing of Backrooms beyond terrible games and photo. Felt to twist felt the two twists were telegraphed. I don't think there was so much twist. I think you can kind of see where they were going here. I won't spoil too much here though. Runamoyin says, from the poster alone, I predicted an overabundance of kids and their iPads these days bits, and I'm glad to be wrong. Yeah, and I think that would have been the worst case scenario, and I think the people at Pixar, I think, work a little too hard on their scripts to just make it that simple. Which I was glad to hear about the production of this film. They very much put a lot more thought into that, the way that they do with their other films, because from what I heard, like the script they started with, they focused just on the theme and they left Woody out entirely. And they thought, can we do this without Woody? Well, let's try it. And I think they were happy with the ideas present, but they still just wanted Woody in there, and they tried to find a way to put him back into the story. Much like how they try to put everything else back in the story. Like all of the toys introduced in Toy Story 4 are back in this one as well. They don't have a lot of dialogue. In fact, a lot of them don't even talk. But it is surprising, like how well it turned out to be. So yeah, it's not just like bashing on iPads. Mostly because that would be too easy, and like it would be just tiresome parent jokes. And not to mention kids would tune out of that too. Let's see. Jay says it doesn't have to be today. You probably will lose your voice. I don't think it's like my voice is okay this time because I found like the right dosage of tea and cough drops to make that work. So my voice is actually fine. Oddly enough, the problem is just getting the volume just right with the breath. I think that's my biggest problem. So I think I might have to work on some different techniques in that regard. So my voice isn't actually cracking. It's actually holding up pretty well, but I won't jinx it. So let's get on to the final film here. Let's get to the Backrooms. Not the actual Backrooms. Let's get to the review. Stay out of the Backrooms. Trust me, you want to stay out of them. All right, get breath going. I think it's just the breath. I can't hold the volume with the breath. All right. Okay, here we go with Backrooms in 3, 2, 1. Whoa, little hair in the shot there. Okay. All right, here we go. So Backrooms is a horror film about the dangers of nostalgia and the weirdness of an empty environment. Well, it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. So, as a lot of people have been talking about, the director of this movie, Kane Parsons, he's only 20 years old, and it's shocking not just that he made a great film at such a young age, but that he taps into the dangers of memory and nostalgia. In a way that I didn't expect from such a young director. He understands the greater terror within the spooky concept of liminal spaces, which extends far beyond empty, spooky office spaces. Now, many would dismiss the terror of these spaces as some weird aversion to architecture. That it's indecipherable within the commonality of the texture and the low hum of familiar fluorescent lighting. The incongruity of these interiors isn't as scary as the... I want to rephrase it differently. But the incongruity of these interiors isn't as scary as the psychological significance placed behind them. So the film mostly follows two people in the 1990s as they lose everything. There's Clark, who is a drunk who lost his wife and house and now resides in his failing furniture store. He tries to address his feelings to his therapist of Mary Klein, but she has her own problems with the loss of her childhood home to a new development. So they do have very much that in common. But as Clark attends to his quiet and spacious grave of selling beds in his furniture store, he stumbles upon a hidden portal in the basement. The portal takes him to what seems like an endless maze of carpet, wallpaper, and randomly placed furniture. And at first, Clark assumes it was an abandoned office space, but the further that he explores, the more strange this place becomes, beyond the mysterious monster stomping around the corners or the furniture phasing into the ground. And traversing these rooms would be creepy enough because of the odd designs of the narrow hallways and small doors and strange additions like pools and pits. And there is some found footage allure in how Clark convinces his apathetic employees to help document this expedition. Which is kind of cool for a little bit. But the revelations turn out to be far more than just a spooky splash of poorly designed office spaces. There are remnants of the past and structures that reflect the familiar, yet do not resemble anything believable. The rooms are littered with everything, from heaps of tattered clothing to a backward stop sign to an ill-placed Christmas tree. I mean, nobody could live here or set up an ideal office space for their business. These places, sorry, breath there, they don't need this. This space does not need us. One more time, I want to stress this point, okay? These spaces do not need us to exist, and we do not belong in them, making it all the more terrifying to get lost in this maze. Now, Clark becomes obsessed with the Backrooms for more than just the infinite layout that he'll never finish mapping. After much exploration, he figures out that this realm is a distortion of memories. Everything that ever existed, everything that ever was is replicated in a way that feels off, never quite looking right, as chairs phase through the floors and doors are improperly placed. And if the recalled past can sorry, clear your throat there. If the recalled past can appear differently, maybe all of our memories can be changed. Maybe Clark doesn't have to see himself as the alcoholic who lost his wife, but was actually in the right for his behavior. And within the Backrooms, that lie seems more real in a place where the walls don't look quite right. And it's a dangerous dose of nostalgia that Mary can only escape by embracing the real, and in one case, using a tactile piece of her history against the monstrous replications. Now, there's an obvious there's an obvious association that the film shares with artificial intelligence, even if it wasn't intentional. The Backrooms don't so much create as they draw from everything that has come before, but presented in a haze of inaccuracies. AI has been used on social media to generate images that make the 1990s seem wondrous, often getting a lot of details wrong with inappropriate pop culture references that don't fit the eras that they're going for. A millennial might recognize these inaccuracies, but someone from Gen Z might not. And the AI images built for nostalgia are not recollections of history, but echoes of a time long since faded from reality. And this retreat into the mess of our memories is appealing when it seems like everything else has been ripped away from us. And in the Backrooms, Clark can have the home he wants, even if the architecture doesn't get the kitchen just right. It's a temptation that Mary might indulge in as well, if not for witnessing the true horrors of becoming lost in this Xeroxed underworld of paper. One more time. I got screwed up right there. It's a temptation that Mary might indulge in as well, if not for witnessing the true horrors of becoming lost in this Xeroxed underworld of paper jams with low ink. Now, and that essential element of addressing our corrupt nostalgia is what makes Backrooms more compelling than just trying to figure out how it all works. Despite the scientist Phil, played by Mark Duplass, breath there. Okay. Despite the scientist Phil devoted, yes, despite the devoted, sorry there. Despite the scientist with his devoted research on this project, the many rooms will likely never. God, that's one more time there. Despite the scientist Phil trying to figure out the Backrooms with a lot of research put into it, the many rooms will likely never end or be fully understood. It is a nightmare of never-ending developments cobbled from the data of our minds, tantalizing for the control it offers and never creating anything new and only the familiar. Okay, here we go. As Clark tries to describe the appeal of such a location, he calls it everything that ever was and everything that ever will be. And it's that chilling sensation that there is nothing left for us in the future, and the existential dread that these mutated monuments to the mundane don't require occupancy to exist, given that this dimension can also replicate people. So yeah, Backrooms presents one of the most vivid movie nightmares, as psychologically intriguing as it is visually disorienting. Parsons' direction not only makes these strange rooms feel wholly unique, but also directs the lead actors in a way that... Oh, sorry. I was losing my breath there one more time. Sorry. Clear my breath there. Okay, one more time. Parsons' direction not only makes these strange rooms feel wholly unique, but he directs... Damn it, one more time. Parsons' direction not only makes these strange rooms feel wholly unique, but also directs the actors in a way that makes their terror feel more genuine than, just passive. He's careful not to let the characters blend into the intoxicating design, given their importance in addressing the emptiness of this labyrinth generated by the waste of our deepest fears and the desire to remove the worst of our past. And that thoughtful nature makes the elaborate staging of liminal spaces all the more frightening, admirable for far more than the devotion to a haunted house of carpet, wallpaper, and fluorescent lighting. It's not just about that. It's about something more. It's about nostalgia. It's about AI, even if not intentional. And it's just about that fear that there's nothing for us in the future and that our only visions of the past are just distortions and echoes of things that are not of our own reality. And that, to me, I find way more chilling than just, a monster behind a corner that pops out and goes boo. So yeah, on that level, the Backrooms I found deeply frightening for touching on such a potent aspect of toxic nostalgia. So yeah, I really love this movie. So The Backrooms is doing really well at the box office, so it's probably still playing in theaters, and you should go check it out if you haven't yet, because it's an A24 film, and those tend to take a while to get to streaming. So be sure to check it out post haste. All right, let me read through some of the comments here. Oh, and it blew through that one. All right. Oh, God, there are a lot of comments here. Let's see if I can get through some of them here. Okay. Ajibu says, "Woo! I made it right on time for Backrooms." Well, congratulations. Interesting. Mr. Rabbit says, "Interesting how Kane sees memories as a threatening cause. It makes sense. If you stay in your memories too long, you'll lose sense of the present and who you are. Nostalgia can be a trap, so tread lightly." Yeah, which is such a good theme, and I was surprised how well he tapped into that as a director who was not born in the era that he's depicting here. And I think that's probably like a very thoughtful take, because I think a lot of people his age might have that same level of obsession that they want to put on not just their own rose-colored glasses, but the rose-colored glasses of others. They want to embrace our nostalgia and misremember so much of the past. That I think because Parson touched on that, I feel really confident about where he could go next as a director for touching on something so deeply connecting. You know, like Obsession, you know, you can kind of understand how it resonates a little bit more with young people, but also it taps into something deeper there as well. So that's what making me really excited about these indie filmmakers, is that they understand more than just like doing cool gore effects and getting just the right framing and lighting for the scares. Don't get me wrong, they do have good lighting. Obsession has amazing lighting in so many sequences. And the Backrooms, of course, you know, you got to nail the creepy atmosphere just right and not reveal too much and get just the right angle. And I thought his direction there really worked. Let's see. A Country Lynn says, "Good evening, everyone. I'm about to see Backrooms today, very soon, which seems appropriate." Oh, you're in for a good time. I really love that film. Mr. Rabbit says, "Also, I like the liminal spaces aesthetic, digital or real life. Some say they find them unsettling or frightening, while others find them strangely comforting." Yeah, and I think it's because of the past. Like, nostalgia is comforting. And I think the idea that I think that there is something, I think, to be said of how not just these spaces aren't occupied by us, but how much freedom you would have to be in that space, to not be, to take a moment that seems rare. Because, you know, if you look at like a lot of office spaces or stores or retail environments from the 1990s, you're more used to seeing people around. You're used to seeing people occupy malls and video stores and record stores and clothing departments. Those places all seem populated and busy at all times of the day. And to imagine that with nobody, to just be in that environment, to have that rare experience of being in that moment and not having anybody else around, I think is kind of interesting and chilling at the same time. So yeah, I think there's a mixture of comfort and fear there. Wild Wilson 814 says,
"I have come here to
Chat
chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Let's
And I'm
play.
all out of bubblegum."
Great reviews, Mark. I hope to catch the next one from the beginning. This is a great time for horror cinema.
That it is. Thank you so much for the super chat, Sonia. It is. It's good time for horror, and that only means great stuff. I know a lot of people are like a little fearful of what these directors are doing, but hey, it means it's going to lift up horror in general. It now means like if general audiences are flocking to Obsession and Backrooms, it means they're going to flock to more horror films. Maybe different horror films. Maybe maybe there'll be a more Verizon horror comedy, or maybe body horror will take off a lot more. You know, like we saw a little bit of that with The Substance. Maybe it'll rise up a little bit more there. So yeah, I'm hopeful, and it's a good time for horror cinema. And a high tide rises all boats. So good time. But I mean, horror is always like a smart investment. It's usually pretty cheap productions, and it's usually a good return on investment. So there's never a bad time to be making horror films. It's always a good time to make indie horror films, for sure. Let's see here. Sorry, I lost my place there. Wild Wilson says, "I don't think it's about nostalgia. It's trauma and the fallacy of human memory, and maybe machines too. To a degree. I mean, there's definitely an obsession with with recording and trying to Here's the thing. I do think it is more about nostalgia based on how this environment is trying to be mapped and documented in order to try to like to understand it, to try to have like a record of something. I think that plays into it a lot as well. I mean, like, well, the fallacy of human memory is also within like nostalgia as well, because there are aspects of my past that I recall, but some not to such a degree. Because I'll spill the beans here a little bit. I have been working on an essay script for the Backrooms, and I've been touching into some of my own childhood memories that I can't quite recall, and don't have like the most like the most tactile evidence to make it to stress it. For example, when I was a kid, I went to an arcade a lot called Aladdin's Castle. It's a fairly well-known chain. Most people know about it, and I know exactly where it was within my old hometown of Rochester, Minnesota. I know where it was. I know the building it's in. I know the exact floor it's at. And I remember my favorite game there was the X-Men beat-em-up game. But for the life of me, I can't remember if it was the single screen version of the X-Men arcade game or the double screen version. I thought it was the double screen version because I remember the console being a little big, but I was also very young at the time. So I don't know for sure if it was or not, and I can't really find any record of which specific arcade cabinet was at that location because that information does not exist. And it might seem like a small thing, but it is that little small thing that makes me wonder, you know, how much of history am I accurately recalling, and how many details am I leaving out that could distort it? And that to me was a little bit terrifying. Not like spooky, like, oh no, I'm going to lose sleep over this, but still, you know, the fallacy of memory and how much you can recall, that is a little chilling, and I think it's fascinating to explore. So yeah, that's one angle I'm pursuing with it. That and vaporwave, so I'll get around to it. A Country Lynn says, by the way, Elon Musk is a trillionaire. We are cooked. Goddamn. Doesn't deserve all that money. And they wonder why so many young people hate capitalism now. Mr. Rabbit says, Backrooms are essentially a simulacrum, a copy without the original, or a distortion of it. Yeah. Yeah, basically, like I said, you know, echoes of the past, you know, a second-hand nostalgia. Runemoyne says, was it really better back then, or did you just not like having to pay bills? Another thing to keep in mind. It's like, yes, life was easier back then because you didn't know that much about the world. Ignorance was bliss back then. Which is why when I try to focus on nostalgia, I only try to focus on what elements that I can recall and what I understood at the time. I'm not gonna be one of those people that's like, oh, back in my day there was no racism, you know, there was no racism in the 1990s. What were the Rodney King riots? I don't remember those. It's like, it's a stupid fucking thing to say. Let's see. AG Booze says, same. I'm fascinated with liminal spaces. I really enjoyed the soundtrack. Oh yeah, very very nice brooding soundtrack. Loved it. Heavy Systemic says, this is like built having the live feed when actors would record promos for all the affiliate networks. Yeah, pretty much is. I do have a script here so I don't get lost. Previously I would just I would ramble and I would say, you know, a lot. So I try to like write out scripts ahead of time so that I have I have like a better means of trying to express what I'm saying and not get too much lost in there. Also, so I can edit this out later. So yeah, you are seeing a live feed here. You're seeing all my outtakes for sure. By the way, this is also how I kind of record my video essays as well. So imagine this with the video essays. Countrylyn says, wouldn't Alice 1988 be a good counterpart to Backrooms since it's both uncanny and abstract in visual direction, albeit differently artistically? Yeah, there is definitely some bleed over. I think for sure there is a lot of bleed over with kind of like the Alice in Wonderland bit aspects there, especially, you know, with like the scene of like the small doors and the multiple handles. So I don't think it's entirely, I don't think it's 1-to-1, but there is some bleeding between the two with the fallacy of memory, you know. Heavy Systems Inc. says Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind comes to mind. Sure, except Eternal Sunshine, I think, has a little bit more control over memories than the Backrooms does. Like Eternal Sunshine, there's actually like an ability to take away or bring back memories, whereas the Backrooms are just, you know, procedurally just like everything keeps going and generating, and it's like something that you can never stop, you know. So I think there is definitely a relation with how it taps into our memories. It's just they're on much different like angles of stressing like the dangers and the existential dread between the two. What I find unnerving is the Backrooms are an unending like space. Yeah. Of our own making as well, yeah. Toaster Bone says, nice, it freaks me the F out. Heavy Systems Inc. says, Kane is born in a wasteland of that world, the world of Goodwill stores. Oh, pretty much, yeah. And I think that, again, fantastic that he understood that he grasped onto that instead of just, you know, having like this cheery version of the 1980s or the 1990s, or even worse, the 2000s. Full Circle Story says, saw some Backrooms last night, enjoyed it, fantastic. As did I. Abandoned buildings, houses, malls, schools, all liminal spaces, yeah. That's a spooky thing too. It's like the idea that something is no longer there, like the idea that video stores are no longer there. But then imagining what those stores remained and we didn't, you know, so another angle to consider. Wild Wilson 814 says, I am not chewing. Yeah, I forgot to mention the super chats, and I think the subscriptions and the Patreon and all that, they all trigger different movie quotes. Roughly like 20, I think I plugged in there, so a whole bunch of different ones. A Country Lynn says, not a horror film, but Is God Is, I find to be very underrated. Currently, and not a ton are watching it despite its impressive production and intense charm. Yeah, I didn't get around to getting a screener for it. But I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I can't wait to see it as well. Full Circle Story says, have you seen his other videos like The Oldest View? There's thematic overlap, especially about memory. I have not. I'm going to have to check that out now, especially since I'm going to be doing an essay on that. So yeah, I'll definitely check them out. Heavy Systems Inc. says it was actually Children of the Atom. Pardon me. Backrooms is like for reality when sampling happened to hip hop remix. Yeah, that's also I'm going to bring up vaporwave in the essay as well, because vaporwave essentially is doing that. It's taking old songs from like Diana Ross and Michael Jackson and remixing them into this weird otherworldly tapping into nostalgia. You know, especially like, what was it, St. Pepsi's Enjoy Yourself, which remixes Michael Jackson's song and also uses footage for the music video from the McDonald's Mac Tonight campaign, which was itself a parody of Mac the Knife. So layers upon layers of weird nostalgia within vaporwave. Benuin Space says, if the 90s was better for anything, it was wealth disparity. For sure. Aggie Booze 1260 says, I watched an interview with Parsons where he was asked about Twin Peaks because there's conversation about how the similarities to the Red Room. He said his dad loved Twin Peaks, but he hasn't seen it. Oh, that is actually wonderful to hear, because he's gonna see Twin Peaks for the first time. God, that's gonna be cool. Oh, I wish I could be there to watch it with him. I wish I could see like his mind melt by the time he gets to the season 2 finale. Oh, that is trippy though. I mean, it's not too surprising that a 20-year-old wouldn't have seen Twin Peaks, but still, I mean, to make something like this and not have seen that's still pretty cool. Also, Aggie is like Baggy. Sorry. Aggie like Baggy. Sorry. Did I say Aggie? Aggie. You're right. There's 2 G's. There's another G in there. Hello, G. All right. where was I? Oh yeah, right. So we got through all the reviews. But I also promised a video store story. So what? I'm trying to think what stories I haven't told. So I've told the ones about the creepy. Well, I actually, yeah, I did tell the story about the creepy guy who may be interested in the Death Wish movies. I told the one about the guy who wanted sex movies. Okay, this isn't too much of a story here, but I will say this: I did connect with one of the employees over Flash games, which is it's the weirdest thing to connect over because like it surprises me what I was able to connect with the other employees over, because at one point I thought like this was back when I thought like nobody else was into anime at the time. This was like 2004, which it was silly. Anime was becoming much more rampant at the time. There was one other employee who I noticed renting anime, and I started talking a lot with them about stuff like Metropolis and Revolutionary Girl Utena. But there was one employee I connected with over Flash games. In particular, it was a game called, and some of you might know this one, it's a Flash game called Saved by Your Balls, which is a pornographic Saved by the Bell game in which you need to come up with money by having sex with Saved by the Bell characters. It was the strangest thing to connect with somebody else in public over this strange ass Flash game. But yeah, that's I don't know why I was thinking of that. That was just like one of those weird things that you can only connect with in a video store, you know. We had I already went over like I was gonna tell the story of stealing video games, but I've already done that. I'm trying to not retell the same stories over and over. I'm trying to think of it. It's not. I'd have to tap into my memory. I've kind of caught off guard there, but yeah, the Flash games. That's how I connected back then. Was the game on Newgrounds? It was. It was from. I believe it was on Newgrounds, and it was also like locally hosted. Because here's the something that I think some people might not know about that era is that Flash games were everywhere. So like if a website had a server that allowed you to host it, you could post Flash movies and games anywhere you wanted. It wasn't just Newgrounds. Like there were tons of websites. There were not just like Albino Black Sheep, but E-Bombs World would just steal stuff. But I remember there was at least like a handful of different sites that all usually had the same Flash content on it somewhere. Some of it was uploaded by the user, some of it was taken off by other people, but Flash games are everywhere. I think it was called like a Jeremy something or whatever. Jeremy made some fucked up Flash stuff at the time, like with like Reading Rainbow, and weird remixed audio. It's like, I think he made some video game where you I forgot what it was called, but he made a Flash game where you played as Bill Cosby trying to lure people in with pudding, kill them, and then take the money to become rich. It was bizarre shit during those days, you know? Bizarre shit. And I don't know why I recalled that. Let's see. Meat and fucking Jesus Christ. See, Wolf says, I can't say what I connected with my coworker over at the hardware store. Oh no. Runome says, shout out mini clip. Oh yeah, mini clips. AG says, oh my god, I used to play a Flash game on Newgrounds that was an R-rated Star Trek The Next Generation game where the goal was to avoid an angry Riker and hook up with Troy. It was ridiculous. I think that was actually the same dude. I think that game was made by the same guy who made Saved by Your Balls, if I remember correctly. Because that did seem to be his style. He liked making these weird, like, somewhat grotesque dating games, kind of. Heavy System Inc. says, I connected with a coworker by not watching where I was walking. Well, that's one way. But yeah, I was trying to think of others. Oh, actually, I do have one story I can tell about the video store. So the one thing I would like to do with like trolling customers was when there was a remake out that was just released on home video. And I would kind of like try to like tease people by saying, oh, we do have it in stock and it's the old one. So this was around the time that the Matt Damon version of The Bourne Identity came out on VHS. So all the copies have been rented out. But I thought, it might be fun. Like, what if I got the original out? Because we still had the original on VHS. So I plucked it off the shelf. I put it behind me by the register. And when somebody came up and said, oh, do you have The Bourne Identity? And I would say, yes, we do. And I'd point right behind it. It's like, oh, that's not Matt Damon. No, it's not. But it's The Bourne Identity. It's a Bourne Identity. You didn't specify which. And they laughed. And then I think they grumbled under their breath that they weren't going to go home with The Bourne Identity that night. Sorry, I was trying to liven up their day. It's not my fault. They were all rented out. Heavy's Vistaming says, I connected with a coworker. Wait, I already read that one. AG says, I like the cut of your jib. And Homeless Bird says, congratulations on hitting 50K, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who has been watching thus far. All of this has been the fact that this channel has grown in such a incredible amount of time has been because of all of you. The reason that I'm able to keep making these videos and keep doing more in-depth reviews and keep trying to basically have good movie analysis on YouTube has been because of all of you. I put a lot of work into it, but if nobody's watching, then I'd probably still be doing it. But it's nice to have that validation as well. But yeah, 50, especially like hitting 50K, because last year around this time, I think I was only at like 10K. So that is massive growth in the span of just like a year. Oh, congrats on 50K. Thank you so much. Yeah. And like I said, I did say once we reached 50K, we would do a special 50K AMA stream, which is not this one. This is the review stream, but I will do a 50K stream sometime either this week or early next week, in which I will answer all the questions. And there are going to be some special segments that I want to try to film specifically for it. So make it a little bit more of a celebration and have a little something special instead of just answering questions the whole time. Okay, so let's get to a quick recap of the movies we reviewed on today's movie review stream. So we reviewed Toy Story 5, the fifth Toy Story film. Not as great as previous Toy Story films, but it still got me choked up a bit, still got me caring for these characters, and still has a strong thematic core about stressing the need for imagination and playtime, which is something that any parent wants their children to embrace and love. I don't think it's just a generational thing. And the fact that this movie didn't become lost in idolizing or demonizing technology, I think really made this film work, even though it's the lesser entry, but still a really damn good film in a fantastic series of movies. I reviewed Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's alien conspiracy theory thriller, which has a hopeful tone, very fun, but also
the French champagne.
Thank you so much, Homeless Bird, for becoming a member and triggering Orson Welles there. This is not champagne, by the way. Well, it's tea. I would show you, but I don't want to pour it all over my lap and make my crotch smell like tea. I would not like it, but thank you so much for the membership. So yeah, Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's latest alien film. It's not up on the same level as Close Encounters or E.T., but it has a firm thematic focus on empathy and hope and connection that I think works really well and won't be missed by audiences, while still having some thrilling moments and some wonderment peppered in there, despite how much it stumbles here and there. Much like Toy Story 5, not the director at his greatest, but still proves how well he can do with a good concept. And finally, Backrooms, an indie horror film about a perpetual interior that taps into the dangers of our faulty memory and nostalgia, and a little bit of unintentional AI commentary thrown in there as well. Great performances, moody score, and just fantastic psychological atmosphere that really got under my skin, really gave me chills, and is such an effective horror film. So of all these, I would say the best film among all of them is Backrooms. But all these films were still pretty good. Like you can't go wrong with either of these. Like Disclosure Day, it's not as strong in the first act, but once it becomes a little bit more obvious with its intentions and wanting to find a hope in discovery of aliens, I really did love the film more. And Toy Story 5, it has like a few too many characters and plot arcs, but for the most part, it still manages to tug at the heartstrings and be a more genuine story rather than just, posing tech versus toys. It has a lot more going for it than that. So all good choices. So if you're heading out to the theater this Father's Day weekend, you got plenty to choose from. You got a nice animated film you can take your family to that isn't just junk, especially since we got a Minions movie coming up. You've got Steven Spielberg's sci-fi film if your kids are a little older and you want a little action, want a little bit of alien intrigue and a little bit of that Spielberg wonder that he usually conjures so well. And if you've got older kids and want to just see some freaky horror, Backrooms is a good choice there. So plenty of choices for Dad this weekend. So you got your choices there. He says Orson Welles' bottomless beer runs. Oh, the French. Why, we know a place where they have peas here. Wait, why do we say they grow peas in winter? They wouldn't have them, I can't do an Orson Welles impression. Actually, I might if I get my voice just right with the if I think of Brain from Animaniacs. Yes, I don't have it. My voice is already cracked out, so just might as well just call it a day here. So I will have video reviews up of all the movies we talked about on today's stream. But if you want to read reviews, they are all up of these movies. They are all up on movieswithmark.com. You can check it out there. So I will be back in 2 weeks where hopefully we will have reviews of new movies. Like, what are we going to have? I think we might have Supergirl. We might have Minions, the latest Minions film. And who knows? There might be some small... Oh, actually, no. There is another one that I didn't get to today, but we will get to next time, which is She's the He, which is a raunchy teen comedy about two boys who try to be trans to essentially like fit in and get girls, but one of them actually ends up going trans, and it's approached in a very heartfelt and meaningful and funny manner while still being very raunchy and gross at the same time. Little bit of a mini review there, but I'll get more in depth to that on the next stream. But it is in theaters right now, and I just wanted to mention that because it is worth checking out. It is one of my more favorite teen comedies of the last few years. Like there's been some okay ones, but this is definitely up there as the best. There's another Minions movie. Yes, there is. It's July. It's July, and if that usually means there's a Despicable Me or Minions movie, because those movies have pretty much locked that holiday down. So we're going to see the Minions interact with Cthulhu, and apparently the 1920s, I think the film is set, so I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, if you want to stay up to date on the latest movies, be sure that you're subscribed. If you'd like early access to some of the video essays that I do, check out the Patreon below. And I'll be making some more video essays. I'm working on one about Melanie Mack, so that one's coming up. I'll also be working on the Backrooms. That's still coming too. And the next Masculinity in Movies video is going to be on Gundam. So you got all that to look forward to, in addition to the 50K celebration AMA stream, which I'll get to sometime this week. So plenty happening on this channel, so much to look forward to, and I hope you'll all join me for that. So yeah, I'll catch you all next time. And until the next stream or until the next video, have a good one, everybody.